Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over the manga I got around to reading in the month of February. If any of you guys live up north, I'm sure you can relate to this. I feel like I spent so much time shoveling the damn snow, I didn't end up reading as much as I typically do in a month. Looking at the list, although it is short, it's still diverse despite not being the longest. So I am excited to share some of my opinions on the manga I got to read this month. So let's start off with some series that I'm up to date on and have just been reading any new releases that come out. So typically just one volume a month here and there, so let's start there. First of which is Dog Red Volume 4. This volume actually came out a bit ago, but I was kind of slacking on it. I never stopped enjoying the series, but I am glad I got back around to it. This series not only fills my sports itch, but I personally find the mangaka's sense of humor right up my alley, so it's always a pleasant read. In this volume, it's more of the same from the previous volume, with Rue and the team continuing to condition before the season starts. We also get some more backstory on the older of the Genma brothers, which was super interesting to me personally. And the volume even caps off with our team taking the ice for their first scrimmage together. As this series develops, the side characters I'm starting to get very invested in, and the story itself is starting to evolve very well. Out of all the manga I keep up to date with only a few of them I read as they come out, I keep up to date with quite a few manga, and this is one of the few that I do keep up to date with as it comes out. So with that being said, it's no surprise that I think anyone who enjoys a sports manga or even just a comedy should check this out. This next series is another one I fell a month behind on, but no worries, I ended up catching up this month. Kingdom, which was my most anticipated release of last year, I ended up reading volume 3 and 4 this month, which is everything that's currently out in English. I won't lie, after reading the first 2 volumes, I was left feeling a bit disappointed, which admittedly was because of the high expectations I had going into the series. However, these 2 volumes were fantastic. If you haven't read these volumes yet, I'll put a timestamp here and you can skip ahead just so you don't get anything spoiled for you, because this is kind of a new release. Okay, if you're still here, let's talk about these volumes. Once Ying gets the support of the mountain people, and they begin their march to regain not only the kingdom, but the throne as well, this is when I really started to realize the potential this series had going forward. Not only do a majority of the characters you get introduced to get at least some level of development, which makes you worry for each of the soldiers once the battle begins, keeping the tension high. More importantly, however, as a reader, we are getting to read the epic of Jin from the very start. My favorite part from these volumes was Jin confidently claiming he'd be a great general in the future. All of the soldiers put him down because he doesn't come from royal blood, therefore it's really not in the cards for him. However, further into the future, while Jin is fighting for his life, Bai, who has been observing Jin since the beginning, sees the man Jin will become if he makes it out of this battle alive. He decides to strike the enemy while he's distracted, knowing he will likely die but being okay with it, betting on Jin becoming the general he claims he will one day become. This, along with how the battles have a tactical sense to them, large groups often split into separate units to accomplish separate goals, the goal not always even being to just kill everyone you see. Sometimes all it takes to win is to capture the right person for the enemy to lay down their weapons, which I enjoy over every battle becoming a question of numbers. Having all this to say in praise of a series within just the first 4 volumes speaks to how well this manga is written. Knowing I have over 70 more volumes to look forward to has me excited to see what's in store for Jin and what battle he will find himself in next. I also got around to reading volume 110 of One Piece. I typically buy these as soon as they come out, but I'll hold off on reading them until I'm in the mood for it. This series is honestly getting so crazy, and I'm not even sure if I mean that positively or not. On one hand, I'm loving finally getting to see what the 5 elders are capable of, and also just a taste of how insanely powerful Joy Boy was, being able to see his Conqueror's Haki on full display. However, on the other hand, I think Gear 5 and Nika as a whole makes it harder for me to take the serious moments serious. In Enies lobby, you really felt the stakes Luffy might die, and fast forward to current day One Piece, that same enemy just got clapped by Zoro, and Luffy is facing off against the 5 elders, who are by far the strongest enemies the Straw Hats have faced so far. However, when Luffy's batting enemy fire back with a comic bat along with a matching baseball helmet, it takes away from the stakes, for me personally at least. This isn't to say I'm not enjoying One Piece. I still look forward to every new volume, and I've been up to date with the series since Impel Down. I just find myself reminiscing on some of the earlier arcs recently. I don't know if I'm just missing what's making the story so great right now, but I kinda want a return to old in a way. If you agree with me, leave a comment. If not, let me know how or why I'm wrong. I'd love to talk about it. That's just my 2 cents on where One Piece is at right now. If you watched my favorite manga from 2025 video, you know how much I've been loving The Climber. I'm not gonna lie, each volume bumps the series higher and higher on my all-time list. In this volume, Mori along with the mountaineering assault team continue their traverse of the Japanese Alps. The whole time everyone is competing to be chosen for the K2 expedition, so although they're traveling as a group, they're all kinda nagging and competing with one another. Mori, more than anyone, ends up being isolated from the others. At first, he's forced to lead the path, having to be the body to carve the path for the climbers behind him in the snow. He continues on with this punishment for days, being pushed to the limit. Getting to see this punishment from Mori's perspective is so interesting as well. Mori, being addicted to the climb, doesn't see this as a punishment at all. He'd much rather be carving his own path instead of following in someone else's. The divide between Mori and the rest of the group truly comes to a head when Mori and Nimi are separated from the group trying to get help. Mori isn't willing to risk his life to save the others, which really shows he's still a loner at heart. Nimi, however, decides to leave Mori to head back to the rest of the team. The following morning, Mori arrives back at the campsite only to be told he's no longer a part of the expedition. Mori ends up continuing to stay within eyesight of the group while remaining on his own, until one morning tragedy strikes. While Mori watches the group traverse on a lower section of the mountain, they're hit by not only 1, but 2 avalanches. And what I love about the mangaka, they can transition from beautiful sprawling mountain ranges to the inside of a dark tent in the middle of the night in below freezing temperatures with such detail that you feel just as immersed in either one. Just the way the story is building up, I can see in the near future Mori finally being given the offer to go on one of these expeditions solo. Although tragedy continues to follow him, Mori himself continues to show just how capable he is on these mountains. I'm just interested to see if this expedition I'm predicting in the future leads to similar tragedy or writes Mori's name in the history books of the climbing world forever. I also got to read volume 4 of Tower Dungeon, and I do always look forward to these releases. It's a pretty typical dungeon crawler as of right now. I originally picked it up because it was written by Nihei, and I hadn't gotten around to reading any of his works previously. This volume doesn't develop the plot all too much. However, the cast of characters does expand, which I think was needed with all the deaths in the previous volumes. I'm interested to learn more about Iscale. I think that's how you pronounce his name. In the previous volumes, the Dracomorphs seem to be the most powerful beings in the world, besides the Necromancer, of course. And he is different from what we've been told so far. He's actually powerless and is more of a scholar than a fighter compared to the Dracomorphs we've already seen. The introduction of these interesting characters, along with the continued mystery in the Yuva's lineage, as simple as the plot is, get to the top of this tower and defeat the big bad, the mangaka continues to introduce subtle mysteries into the plot that makes you want to reread each volume to make sure you aren't missing any hidden details. A lot of the series I've talked about are either long or are coming out monthly, so are understandably hard to keep up with. However, this manga is only 4 volumes into its run and only comes out every 3 months, so it's a lot easier to keep up with. So for that reason, Tower Dungeon is getting this video's recommendation to pick up and add to your own collection if you don't already have it and it sounds interesting to you. So with that being everything I had to say about Tower Dungeon, we are now getting into the manga that I ended up completing this month. It won't always work out this way, but each of these I actually started and completed all in the month of February. The first of which is a short one-shot I've had my eyes on for years and finally picked it up recently. Sandland by the late Akira Toriyama. It follows a relatively simple premise, but Akira Toriyama just has a way of bringing out every drop of emotion and feeling out of his artwork and paneling. The story follows our main character Beelzebub, a demon who also happens to be son of the king of the demons, Lucifer. Unlike many of the other demons, Beelzebub doesn't find pleasure in tormenting the humans. Rather, he feels bad for them just as much as he does his fellow demons, because the people of this area find themselves in a terrible predicament. They live in a desert where the river that previously ran through it had long dried up. Not only that, the greedy king imports water and leaves the people in poverty, charging exorbitant prices, knowing he is the sole supplier in the area. So when one day a local sheriff shows up and asks for Beelzebub's support in finding the Phantom Lake, he does not hesitate to help, after being promised some retro video game consoles, of course. Outside of this general adventure, you get to follow the characters on the trip. They share future backstory as long as you get to see some fights with the king's army. I won't say what they find at the end of their adventure. I will say I finished this one shot and really wished Akira Toriyama would have expanded on the world and story further. I'm not saying it should have been as long as Dragon Ball or anything, but a nice 5 to 10 volume series to show off more of the interesting world he built would have been amazing. Still, for just one volume, it's well worth the read. I have quite a bit of one-shots in my collection, and this is for sure on the better end of the one-shots in my collection. And needless to say, if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, just check this one out for the art alone. You'll love seeing the artwork you're so familiar with, yet again in another one of Akira Toriyama's works and amazing worlds. This next one might catch me some heat, but I've finally read more of Junji Ito's works. For the longest time, the only series I had read of his was Dissolving Classroom, which I knew was one of his worst received works. With that being said, I figured with the first being one of his worst, the next should be one of his best, according to many fans at least. That manga, of course, being Uzumaki. I was drawn to this manga in particular for several reasons. The first being, as previously mentioned, many say this is one of Ito's best works, and based on the amount of adaptations it has, I had to see what all the hype was about for myself. As I've said in previous videos, when it comes to horror manga, I like a longer story, and although Uzumaki is collected into one hardcover, it is one of his longer stories, so if I was gonna like any of his works, this would be it. The manga takes place in a small town off the coast of Japan. Shuichi, a teenage boy who lives in the town, is convinced it's cursed. However, it's not cursed by a ghost or a spirit, but simply a spiral pattern. The story is broken up into several subsections where you get to see different ways these spirals are taking over the town. My personal favorite was the one of the dad that became obsessed with collecting spiral objects until he turned himself into a spiral. Let me just say, flipping to the page to show where the missing father had been all along, 10 out of 10 made it worth the read on its own. I was also blown away by the 2-page spread of the town view from the top of the nearby mountains, and I enjoyed Uzumaki a lot. As much as I enjoyed the premises, I still stand by my feelings that I should start to look outside Junji Ito for my horror fix, because as good as this manga was, it was still missing something for me, and if this is what many consider the peak of his works, I think I'll almost be wasting my time reading some of his other works. Not to say that I won't check them out, it's gonna be on the back burner, because this year I really want to try to find some good horror series. So if any of you guys know of any horror manga that I should be checking out, leave it in the comments. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll honestly probably end up picking it up because that's what I'm really searching for this year. A good horror manga to dig my teeth into. This last manga took up the majority of my reading time in February. Outside of manga, I'm a big fan of post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk settings for video games and many other entertainment media, so I had my eye on this one for a while now, knowing I would love it. Some of you may be able to just guess it based off of that, but if not, I'm talking about Battle Angel Alita. So the reason it took so long for me to pick up was because, to be cost efficient, I wanted to get the box set, and on Amazon I've seen it go on sale for good prices in the past, and was trying to wait as long as I could. I finally saw it for like $75 and decided to get it, and I'm so glad I did. I'm not gonna dive too deep into it in this video, but I enjoyed this manga so much more than I thought I would. The mangaka does something unique where They dip into different genres as the series progresses. It begins with Alita being discovered and brought back to life by Dr. Ito, who discovers her in a junkyard. Although she had her body back, she had no recollection of her past life. Even her name was inherited from Dr. Ito's recently deceased cat. The first section is a typical action manga. Alita somehow has past memory and mastery in a lost martial arts. She uses this to work as a bounty hunter, where she begins to regain more memories, which suggests she may be connected to Zalaeum, the city of the rich that floats above the scrapyard Alita calls home. At this point, she's being hunted by a fellow bounty hunter, as well as the mad genius Nova, who plays a much more important role later in the series. However, the story then transitions into my favorite section, Motorball. This is a brutal gladiator-style sport that's played in the scrapyard for fun. Alita ends up joining the league, and you watch her climb the ranks and show off her agile fighting style, and it was just the highlight of the series for me. Afterwards, the story gets back to the main plot, which I'll leave for anyone who still hasn't read to discover for themselves. All I will say is, going into this manga, I had no intentions of buying the sequel series, Last Order, and I'm just gonna say I've already started checking out prices on Amazon because this series was so good. So if post-apocalyptic cyberpunk type manga sound like they'd be up your alley, or it's something you already enjoy, you will love this manga, I can guarantee it, so check it out. That does cover everything I read in February. Like I said, it's not as much as I'm used to, but I still had some fantastic reads, and that's the goal at the end of the day with this hobby. If you guys read any of the same manga as me this month, let me know if you felt the same as I did, and if not, what your opinion was. The next video coming out will be my manga haul, which should be coming out only a few days after this one. Those videos typically require less editing, so unlike videos like this, I could have it edited and posted all in one night. Don't let anyone in that video know you guys got a sneak peek to some of the pickups in that video, such as Battle Angel Alita. Not to worry though, there are plenty of other manga I'm excited to show off to you guys. I can't wait to see you guys in that video, and if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like on the video. And if you are not already subscribed, why not, I don't know, hitting that subscribe button down there. And I'll see you guys in the next one, and make sure to enjoy some manga.